In the article below, I have reviewed Degiro, which is a broker which is based in Holland. So I'm going to talk about the positives and negatives of Degiro as of 2020. Now, the positive about it is a cheap platform for people to invest in if they want DIY investing. Also, when it comes to the IT system and other things like that, it is pretty good. But having said that, you shouldn't really think that's particularly a good thing, because pretty much every platform now has reasonable IT, and besides, what matters is things like the performance and so on. You do have access to a range of funds and investment choices and so on. What about the main negatives about the platform? Now, number one, it doesn't appear to be in a capital gains efficient system. What I mean by that is it's based in Holland. It's not based in Luxembourg or Isle of Man or Bermuda or whatever. If you're an expat, you're probably going to have to pay capital gains tax when it comes to this platform, unless you are living in a country which has no capital gains tax. So if you're based in Saudi Arabia or something like that, if Degiro can accept you, then maybe you don't have to pay capital gains tax. But let's say you're in a place which does have capital gains tax. In reality, you might have to actually pay it. So indirectly, it might not be the most efficient way to invest, because you might be taxed at source. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a tax advisor. My specialty is within the investment field, and tax is very complicated and it often changes. So what is relevant this year might not be relevant in 2021, because tax laws are always changing, and in 5 years it might always change. But from what I've seen with various countries' tax laws, it's not as efficient as going through a broker which is based in, say, Luxembourg or those offshore jurisdictions, because Holland does charge capital gains tax, and indirectly that means it's not as cheap as expected. Also, most people going through Degiro are doing their own investments. Now, that often doesn't work. It can work if someone's very disciplined and just buys and holds things. It can be great, right? And people can do very well. But I know plenty of people who, whenever there's a stock market correction, they panic. For example, a few months ago, I met a guy who very sensibly has invested in index funds for about 15 years now. And he said to me, when Trump got elected, I stopped investing. I didn't sell, but I stopped, adding money to the US markets. But of course, that was a very foolish decision, right? And anyone who's done the reading on investing knows you shouldn't try to time in that way. Even if you don't sell, you shouldn't say, markets are so high now, so I'll tell you what, I'm not going to invest anymore. That just doesn't work. So bear in mind that if you invest for yourself, I would do a hell of a lot of reading about things like behavioral finance. On the video below, or another video I've done on my YouTube channel, I've talked about good investment books for beginners. And I made the point that some books which aren't pure investment books, like Your Brain and Your Money, should be read by anyone who wants to invest money, because it talks about how our brains work, how we often make irrational decisions when it comes to money. And study after study has shown that actually the average person who invests their own money can often only get 4 or 5% when the markets are getting 10%, because of the emotional cycles people go through. In other words, take Vanguard as an example. Jack Bogle, who of course is the founder of low-cost investing, and of course is a big advocate of buy and hold. He admitted in one of his books, though, that net inflows into Vanguard index funds were at their highest in 1999 during the bull market, right? Then in 2000, net outflows were high, right? Because people were panicking. They figured, markets are going down. Then again in 2008, people panicked at the bottom. So if you're going to invest for yourself, make sure you don't buy high and sell low. Just buy every single month or whenever you have money, and don't let emotions get in the way of that. And linked to that, Degiro has a lot of investment choices, right? Like most DIY platforms. However, that's not necessarily a good thing, right? If you're, buying things that you shouldn't be, like you're buying individual shares which clearly are not going to beat the market, or you're over diversified, you've got loads of ETFs, including gold ETFs, which haven't beaten the market over any long period of time. The price of gold is pretty much stagnant since the times of Christ, even though it's had some good years and bad years. Well, in that case, it's not good to have a lot of investment choice, right? So I can remember, again, going back to Bogle, one of my favorite quotes of his is he said, "Choice is the enemy of an investor." Now, what he means by that is this. If you just say, right, I tell you what, I'm going to buy and hold 3 good quality funds. I'm going to have 2 or 3 good quality index funds, 1 bond fund. You can do very well. But if you start to say, oh, I love all this choice, so I'm going to have 10% Bitcoin, 10% gold, 10% silver, 10% this stock, a few index funds, a few actively managed funds, I tell you what, you're not going to beat the market long term, almost for sure. You might have some good years and some bad years, but the evidence is very clear. So Degiro has some great choices in terms of investment, but it also has some bad choices because by definition it's like a supermarket. It has thousands and thousands of investments, so it's a double-edged sword. So in conclusion, really, I would say that it's not a bad platform, but for expats you should especially be worried about the capital gains aspect, and also you should be careful that you've done sufficient reading before you invest your own money.